Hey guys, as you can tell, I'm still wearing my WrestleMania shirt. I'm doing a little bit of a batch of videos today so I can get ahead of the game as opposed to being perpetually behind it the way that I always am. Anyway, let's do a very quick addition to the oppression assignment I talked to you guys about. Now, I defined oppression for you last time, and we talked a little bit about what that word means and how education has a tendency to increase oppression before it decreases it. Now, one of the things that I love about writing, and this took me years and years and years to figure out, writing is not just something that we use to accomplish things in our lives. It's not just a means to an end. It is an end in itself. It's something that's worth doing for its own sake. And this is a really hard idea to transmit to students because you've kind of been trained to think of writing as just something that's required of you and should only be done when someone commands you to do it. Now, I'm not under any delusion to think that you guys are going to come out of this class and be, lifelong writers or anything like that. But I would like to model for you and help you to understand what the benefit of occasional writing does for your brain. Writing is something that should sometimes be used as what we call heuristic. It's a learning device. It can shape your learning. It can help your brain, and it can help you better understand your place in the world and your role within it. Because when we write, we are engaging with ourselves. A lot of people, one of the things that's most unsettling and unpleasant about writing is the fact that you are basically having a conversation with yourself. When you have a conversation with yourself, if you do not have a very well-defined identity, if you don't have a good sense of inner life, a good sense of self, it's very hard to talk to yourself. There's just not much there. And that's something that you need to be very, very well aware of. If you don't have a strong sense of self, it's very easy for someone to come in and manipulate you. Someone can come in and get you to do all sorts of crazy crap because you don't necessarily have a strong sense of inner life in order to resist when someone else wants to manipulate you. Now, writing forces us to look inward. And it's one of the scariest things for a lot of people because you sit down to write and you look at that blank page and you try to put words on it. And you go back and a lot of you guys will put a few words down and then you throw it away, right? You'll tear up the paper or you'll delete everything. You'll start all over again. It's like screaming into some type of void. And there are several reasons that people do this. One, you have a very aggressive and very mean, very critical inner editor that keeps you from expressing yourself at all. Thanks, education. That's another facet of someone sitting over your shoulder and constantly criticizing your behavior and only looking at the negative aspects of it without looking at the positives, without looking at the beginning steps of writing and seeing the potentiality to it. Rather, focusing instead on all the things that you've done wrong. This is part of the reason why so many of my students come to me and say, Mr. Bailey, I'm a bad writer. No, you're not. You've got to go through the process like everyone else. And that means that the first draft is going to be very imperfect. And it takes work. It takes time to shape writing into something that is more clear, that is more developed. But everybody's too obsessed with their own imperfections and actually to actually put something out there to start building and shaping on their way up. But the thing that's really scary is when you turn inward and you look inside in order to have that conversation with yourself to start the writing, and there's nothing there. There's literally nothing inside for you to interact with. There's no voice. There's no view. There's no opinion. There's just a person who is existing in the moment, unaware of themselves. That is kind of a dreadful realization, isn't it? That's a scary thing to encounter That's almost like something out of a horror movie or something. Well, how do we develop the inner sense of self? Talking to yourself, going back and building up a rapport with yourself, understanding yourself. The next part of this assignment will seek to do that. You have laid out the things that oppress you. You have identified them. You've already put information out into the void. You don't have to go back and bring it all back up again. You've already got something out there. You've done the hard part. Now, go back and read your writing again and look at it from a new perspective. What strength has the oppressive things in your life granted you? What wisdom have you learned? What knowledge have you gained in dealing with this oppressive element? I will very much try to participate in the questions that I ask you. I think I'm healthier now than before I learned I was diabetic. Y'all, I could blow through an entire bag of Butterfingers in a single sitting. I blew through an entire bag of double stuffed Oreos. I remember my mom thought about calling like the paramedics because she was like, "You ate an entire bag of double stuffed Oreos?" I was like, "Yeah." Now, that was a long time ago. That was when I was in high school and I had a metabolism that worked. If I'd never been diagnosed with diabetes, I probably would have kept eating myself into absolute like oblivion, right? I seriously believe that I have a better shot at being healthier now because I am much more careful about what I eat. My children, the oppressive part that I talked about last time. My kids are the greatest thing that ever happened to me. And it's funny too, because my children have me looking at the world completely differently. I think they've taught me to be more patient with myself. I see them struggle with things. I see them get upset. I see them get sad. And my first instinct is to say to them, it's okay, right? You're loved. Here's how we fix your problem. Here's how we feel better about ourselves. And you know what I realized in the process? The process of parenthood, that it does rob me so much of my freedom to do the things that I wanted to do. I realized I'm not very nice to myself. I am instinctively compassionate with my children. I feel their pain and I immediately seek to rectify it. I don't do that with myself, right? I'm very hard on myself and I'm very mean to myself and I say not nice things to myself. If I never had kids, I don't think I ever would have noticed that. And I never would have learned how important that empathy is, not just with others, but for myself. I think I'm a little mentally healthier because of it. Like, I'll tell you a quick story. And keep in mind, look what I'm doing here. Do I expect you guys to be able to engage with your oppression and find the positive aspects of it so easily? No. If this is not something that you do on a regular basis to evaluate your life and meditate upon your life, this is going to be hard. It's probably going to be very simple. You're probably not going to be able to dig very deeply into your own experiences yet. That's okay. This is what writing does. The reason I can do this, the reason I can go back and dig all this information out for myself, is because I write. It's because I force myself to write. That writing sharpens my brain so that I have a better eye to understand my own experiences. And I can see all these details that are hiding there that most people never really stop and look at, because writing makes us hyper attentive to it. My son was learning to skateboard. Now, believe it or not, I skateboard a little bit. I look like a big bear at the circus, but I skateboard a little bit. It's something I enjoy. And I was going down ramps and I was doing stuff, and he wanted to go down a ramp. And I knew he was going to fall. I knew he was going to hurt himself. And I said, this is part of it, right? I warned him. I was like, you got to do, all you can really do is go over that line. And all you can do is push yourself over that line. And from there, It's very likely to not be a pleasant experience, but I fell 20 times going over a ramp. I still have scars on the old buttocks, right? But that was how I learned to push myself to go down those ramps. My son goes down the ramp and he wipes out gloriously. I mean, it was like something on America's Funniest Home Videos multiplied by 10. He fell to the ground in an absolute heap, like just this hollow thud as his body just gonk into the ground. And I go running to him, and he's 8, and he was crying about it, right? Which I think I cried the first time I fell off that ramp. I can admit it. It hurt. The buttocks were in a very bad position, right? And I ran to him, and this is one of those like personal defining moments, not just as a father, but as a human being. And as I ran to him, and he was so upset, and he was crying, what I did, I got down on his level, and I looked him in the eye, and what I said in that moment was, I'm proud of you. I'm proud that you got over that line and you took that risk. You ended up hurting yourself. And from here on out, whether you decide to skateboard anymore or not, you pushed yourself over that line and you went for it. And that is something to be proud of. And he kept crying for a while, but there's been plenty of times in my life where something went horribly wrong, something that was really important to me. And I remember not knowing how to feel when everything fell apart. And when I was just left with this disaster on my hands. And then a lot of times when that was happening, I was hurting too. I didn't know what to do. I didn't know what to say to myself in that moment to make that pain go away. And so when that happened, I looked him in the eye and I told him the one thing that I'd always wanted someone to say to me in that moment. And that's, I'm proud of you. You took the risk, you paid the consequences, but you had that courage. That's something to be proud of. I don't like to toot my own horn very much. I'm such a liar. But I felt really happy with that interaction with him, right? Because if anything, I want to engender within him, take those risks. Feel that pain and be proud of it, right? Be adventurous, be courageous. Don't be afraid. Go for it. Because at that moment, that's the time when you should feel most proud of yourself. Now, again, I don't expect you guys to come at it with the Morgan Freeman narrator type analysis that I've given you for these oppression topics. But this is what I want. I want 3 paragraphs. I'm being ambitious because I want y'all to feel some pain today. I want 3 paragraphs. I want you to tell me about the strength, the positive, that the things that oppress you have given you. And you might have to dig deep for it. You might have to really stretch. And that's okay. You might have to just sort of ramble for a bit about Totino's frozen pizza. I love Totino's frozen pizza. Dear Lord, it's delicious. The most important thing is to get over that skateboard ramp, wipe out hard, and feel proud of yourself about how much it hurts afterward. Thanks a bunch, guys. I can't wait to see what you come up with.